10 Steps Further is a podcast designed to help you get 10 steps further along your spiritual journey. If you've been on your journey for 30 years or 30 minutes, if you believe in God, or even if you're not sure He exists, all we're trying to do is help you get 10 steps further. I'm Jonathan, and this is Jack, and we're just taking a walk. Why don't you join us?
Welcome to another podcast, and this is a very special episode. I don't know if all of you know that I do 2 podcasts because I'm really important.
Got more to say than you could ever get in one podcast.
Right. So I'm here with Jonathan from 10 Steps Further. How you doing, Jonathan? Good. All right. This is your job.
We have a window in this office.
Oh, that's nice. You'll be if you check out. We'll have some of this online too, like video. You can see us. We have Hannah Branch here too.
Hi.
So this is a dual podcast because I do 2 podcasts, 10 Steps Further, to help you get further along in your spiritual journey. And I also do one called Global Family, which helps those people who have adopted or internationally adopted or whatever. Really, it's a great space for parents, regardless. Mm-hmm. And this topic covers them both. Mm-hmm. And it's called, do you know?
Parenting kids with phones.
Something like that. Good try, Jonathan.
Yes.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Yes, parenting a child with a cell phone. And it's an issue, right, Hannah?
It is an issue. It's a very big issue.
Yeah, so tell us what this looks like. First off, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Yeah. So I'm a therapist that works in La Mesa, San Diego area. And my main clientele and population is teens and families, anywhere ranging from 2 actually to probably about 70. So
what she said is that she has 2 offices.
I do.
We have been to those offices.
This morning.
We started at the other office, which is 15 minutes away, and now we're here, the right one.
Getting a full tour. Yeah.
So, yes, and you've not only you're a therapist, but you've done a lot of work with children in crisis too, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So how, in your practice, are phones making their way into the discussion?
They are making their way into discussion in almost every way, every conversation, every session. We joke with a lot of other colleagues that are working with teens right now that there's almost no session that we go without talking about cell phones. So most cases, at least at this point, somewhere in the presenting problem when they first come to see me, a cell phone is a part of the issue, social media, social bullying, inappropriate boundaries, but even all the way up to adults, that the media presence is a very new mental health ballgame. So
what I want to ask you is the reason why we're talking about phone stuff, is it because there's bad stuff happening and it ends up on the phone, or is the phone the cause?
I would say probably both.
Right.
The phone in and of itself represents a lot of coping and social interaction things. I mean, it's obviously very symbolic.
Right.
The phone in and of itself is not evil, but the function of the phone is difficult.
Right. So the conversations that would maybe typically happen, on a school or a basketball court or something, they're happening online. And so that's why you're dealing with phone issues.
Yes, definitely.
When I found, Hannah and I have been talking about this for a while, and she gave me some articles, and I found, here's some stats. Did you know that 22% of kids between the ages of 6 and 9 own cell phones? All right. I just read that to you, Jonathan.
22%.
Which is first grade to 4th grade.
Yeah.
First grade to 4th grade. You just got your kid a phone.
Yeah, Talia got hers at 11, which was like the boys got theirs at 15. And so she was banking on getting it at 15. And then when we upgraded some phones, we found out we could get another one on our account for less than we had previously been paying. So for Christmas, we got her a phone. She was so excited, but yeah. Yeah, so at 11, she got a phone.
Oh, wow. Okay. When they become tweens, 9 to 12, it raises to 60%.
Right.
Which is funny because in our culture, that feels low.
That does feel.
It feels low.
Very low.
So I wonder how old this study was. But here's what got me. Several studies found that children and teens who spend more time with screens are less happy, more depressed, more likely to be overweight. In a newly released paper, they expanded the survey. They found that children and teens who spent more time on screens scored lower in well-being across 18 of 19 indicators. After 1 hour of use, children and teens who spent more time on screens were lower in psychological well-being. They were less curious. They were more easily distracted. They had a more difficult time making friends and managing their anger and finishing tasks. Now, teens who spent an excessive amount of time on screens were twice as likely to be diagnosed with anxiety or depression. Wow. Okay, so coming into this podcast, was my goal. I don't want to be so depressing. But I felt like I just took us to that spot.
Yeah.
It's important that we have the conversation, right?
Yeah.
That as parents, or even, let's take it from this spot. For you as a person with your phone, these could be indicators for you as well. So it's not just our kids, but it's us.
Right.
We all have to figure this out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go back to the expert, Hannah. So, when there are phone issues, what do they look like?
What do they look like? I don't know if I would consider myself an expert with phone stuff, but I do experience it a lot. And I think that is.
You are a counselor and you are educated.
I am educated, yes.
You're better than us.
Well,
We'll take
knows?
that.
Yeah, but I think that the interesting part is that most people wouldn't consider themselves an expert because it is such a new and up and coming issue. So the issues are evolving so much faster than we can even keep up with. And so oftentimes I'll kind of call it the parental whack-a-mole, where you do one thing with the phone and then set another limit and then set another limit, and you're just chasing them because the development of technology is so fast that even we can't necessarily keep up with it. So a lot of the things that we're seeing, most of them, at least in a clinical context, are very relational. So you are seeing a lot of really interesting problems due to anonymity over social media. So people feel like they can say anything that they want. They can express their thoughts and feelings that they would otherwise not usually say to face-to-face people and interactions. And it's causing a ton of self-esteem related complications. So I would say self-esteem is probably at the root of a lot of this stuff, whether it's comparison, the like culture and getting popularity.
Ooh, that's a good one. We got to talk about that.
Yeah. Or just the ability to communicate things that otherwise aren't very normative. And so it really impairs people's ability to connect socially because they lose their ability to practice desensitizing themselves or gaining confidence or whatever it is via in-person interaction because they have a very viable distraction. And even as adults, we do this. I mean, you see people walking around the grocery store holding their phones. We just get to eliminate so much social contact just because we have this device that's justifiably distracting. So
she just in a couple paragraphs proved that she is so much smarter than us. She proved she's an expert right then. What you were talking about is the concept of digital citizenship.
Yes.
And the rules for how I interact with you one-on-one, face-to-face are different.
They are.
When I don't see you anymore. And you notice this, you mentioned bullying would be one way, right? I thought you were going to say something there.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, here's another thing that we need to talk about too, is as you are dealing with people who are under the 18, there is no such thing as delete on the internet.
There is not.
Right? Once it's up there, it's up there. And whatever you posted about you or yourself or your thoughts or whatever, anybody can see it from now on. And this is gonna, God, I'm sounding depressing again. You get into a college or you're applying and everything looks great, but I'm telling you what, they're gonna check out your Instagram feed and they're gonna check out, Snapchat. They're gonna do their research on you, and some of those things you can't get back, right?
Yeah, are we seeing that as being? I mean, because I've heard that since the internet started, like my whole adult life since it's been out there, is that actually like I've rarely met anybody who that's been an issue, except for obviously, I mean, it's just like, oh, you're applying for a job and you're currently posting nothing but party pics. Like, I could see that being an issue, but I've just never met somebody like, well, you know what, my whole life was ruined because I post something 10 years ago that I probably shouldn't have posted.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So
Generally, for the global family people, Jonathan plays this role in my other podcast. Whenever I say something, he tries to come up with something contrary that discredits it.
Yeah.
So, but the positive thing, here's where I think we need you to take us, Jonathan.
okay.
Because there can be this feeling of fear, and this new generation, and it happens really in every generation of parents. Whatever the kids are dealing with, it's a very different world than the one that the parent grew up in.
Right.
And it can easily lead to fear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now you have I think you have a good perspective on not allowing the phone to bring fear into your life.
Yeah. I was an early adopter for the iPhone. Like I had first gen iPhone,
So it's your fault.
paid $500
Wow.
to have that thing, and like nobody had bought a phone for $500, but I was like, okay, I've held off for 3 months. I got to get it. And so,
Well, just so you people know, Jonathan's never spent $1 on clothes.
yeah, that's right.
It's a big deal.
Or cars, right?
Right.
Okay. But I brought it in, and one of the thing I think that I've communicated, mostly because kind of an excitement for technology, is I have communicated to my kids possibility. Like you have a supercomputer in your pocket. So less like my kids have rarely heard, the dangers from me talking about what's on. I mean, I kind of lock their phones down a little bit as far as what access they get, especially my daughter, who's the youngest, but I give them full access to you've got a music studio in your pocket. You've got a high-def video camera in your pocket. You have access to communication that you can affect the world in a positive way. So those are the types of things that I'm constantly saying to them, rather than, oh, a scary device here. Good luck. I don't do that. So
Now, that is a larger parenting strategy, too, that I want you to talk into. You can go about it with fear, or you can...
Yeah, so my thought is just generally speaking, human beings, especially young people, are so drawn for the forbidden. So if I'm highlighting all of the scary stuff, man, that intrigues them. And so I just personally, I feel like the more I can highlight possibility and excitement and give them a sense of adventure and possibility, the more that actually will protect them. Like I remember growing up watching like boring movies. I remember nothing about the movie except for the time that my mom got mad that something was on the screen, and she's, I can't believe, I don't know what's on the screen. And there was such a draw to that moment in the movie. And my dad would always get in trouble because he allowed that movie to be playing in our living room with the kids.
Right.
So like I just remember that. So it's like just thinking of those kind of things. My thought is, if I can get them to dream about what's possible with the technology that we have in this day. Mm-hmm. And yes, there's dangers and scary stuff that we can deal with in conversation, but I definitely am the other side of, like, I just cut it off. Like, okay, you're abusing that. You don't get to have it anymore. And so we just...
Right. We're going to talk a little bit about some strategies, some goals and what have you. It's the one thing that it happens so quick that I wish we could go back and say, here are the goals, and here's here are the boundaries that you're going to have. And we'll talk about that. Anything off of what Jonathan said that strikes you? You're seeing parents and kids all the time.
Yeah, I really like that perspective too, because I think oftentimes with phones, I'll liken it to driving in a car with a teen when they're starting to drive. That the car is a very powerful tool. It can be really beneficial. You can use adventures for it. You can gain a lot of freedom. There's a lot of autonomy that comes from it. Yet the car is also a very powerful tool.
Right.
And so you get in the car and it can cause a lot of danger. So oftentimes when you're driving with teens, you do see parents go one direction or another of don't hit that person, make sure you turn, slow down, all of those things. Or how do we encourage you? Great turn, you're doing well, make sure you do this. This is opportunistic. And so I think holding both and is a really important dynamic with kids, because if you're attuning to your child, you often see where they're erring. And some kids naturally err more on the limit testing side of things, and other kids are really quick to capture the opportunity of it. And so I think even knowing your kid and knowing, can I trust this child, and are they really connecting well to the positive, or do I need to put in a little bit more structure as it relates to some of the testing?
Right.
One of the things I keep reading over and over that is an issue is we need to help teach our kids that relationships matter. and the relationships that you're with and how to navigate those relationships in a really positive way. You know, there's some old time traditions. I'm the oldest person in the room, okay? But looking someone in the eye, that used to be something that people did.
Now it's make sure you're looking at the camera.
Right.
So true.
Right. And the amount of people who have had accidents running into poles because they're looking at their phone.
I went for a walk around the block this morning, and there was a young guy, walking, looking at his phone, and and he had headphones in. And I don't think he knew I was there until I was like next to him off the sidewalk, because he would have just ran me right over.
Not looking at you.
It was crazy. I'm like, he didn't even know I was on the sidewalk until I was right there.
It's our job to teach that these relationships matter. You walk into a room, and I know this happens to you, Jonathan, where there are 4 kids.
Yeah.
They're all hanging out together.
Yeah.
And they're on their phone.
Yeah.
To other people.
Yeah.
Right? Not connecting
Yeah.
with the people in their room.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Do you have an answer for that? Anything you do with your kids?
No, I mean, we I don't know. I mean, I'll ask them what they're doing, because most of the time, I mean, it's funny because each of my kids are different. Josiah's always kind of scheming about how he's going to make $1 billion, and so he's looking things up that way. Asher and Talia tend to just kind of watch stuff, and so I have their phones set up to have a limited amount of time during the day, and it's so funny because you know when that's at, because they'll come out and they'll just start hanging with us, and it's just like they used up their time for the day, somewhere around 2 hours. So it's like super generous amount of time, but it's like, man, they're using that up.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe we want to talk a little bit about setting up proper boundaries for what this looks like. And let's maybe open it up to it's not, we're just not talking about our kids, but how we can set up proper boundaries as well.
Yeah.
Hannah, what's your thoughts? Kick us off.
Yeah, so I like that you brought up the time parameters, because I think oftentimes we're not even aware of how much we're on our phones.
Right,
And so now
right.
they have, I think the newest update has the tracker or a
It's
couple.
pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can see how many hours a week you use your phone. And even last week it said like 2.5 hours is how much you use your phone a day. And I remember feeling shocked because I'm not big into social media. I don't go online much. I do use music and research things. And,
and it'll break it down for you too.
Yes.
So then you don't feel so bad if you're using it for, productive reasons versus just you're on your phone.
Yes, totally. But I think when we talk about it, the idea of spending 2 hours on your phone feels like a really large amount of time. And even if most people come in and say, oh, I just wish I had 1 more hour in my day.
Yeah.
But then we look at it and we're on our phone for 4 hours a day, and it's a really interesting
Right.
discrepancy. And so the awareness piece is probably a good spot to start, but also kind of normalizing the idea that 2 hours is a fairly normal, fairly low amount of time to be on your phone at this point in time. And that's very different.
Okay, I have the stat right here for me.
Okay. I'm not looking at my
Daily average from my screen time. Do you know what it is?
I'm going to go with 4.
3 hours and 17 minutes.
Oh, there you go. Good work.
Do you know
That's
what
good.
you know what the average for most high school students is?
9.
It is 9 hours.
Isn't that crazy?
9 hours. And we had this issue. And what we need you to understand is that if you're looking at this on video, there is a screen time. If you have an iPhone, you can check on screen time, and you can include all of your children in that. So if I look on my screen time, then I can go down and I can look at my family, and it has my daughter on there, and I can check. It can hit her box,
Right?
And then I can find out. This is how we found out a lot of the stuff that was going on, because we had set downtime limits, like you can't be on it after 10, you can't be on it before 7,
Right?
And she was blowing past all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But with this app, you can set that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you can set how much time they can be on their phone, and you can set how much. And we have had conversations about what's appropriate and what that looks like.
Yeah.
What have you.
Which is also helpful to know the average, because if most teens are on their phone for 9 hours, then when we're trying to restrict it to 2, if you think about that, that's a huge cutback. And when teens will often say, that's not fair, my friends are on their phone so much more often, that's actually very true. And so when parents come in saying, 1 to 2 hours seems like an appropriate amount of time, that is actually where they're experiencing so much of the tension. Because
and I like for our kids, like, so my 2 hour limit is actually on video streaming. So that's Netflix, Disney Plus, all of that. And then like they have basically unlimited on text except for a certain time. So I cut that off at certain times of night and things like that. But so it's not as much of a crackdown, but it's interesting though, because going back, I would look at at my house growing up, it was like we were watching TV at night as a family, but we were watching TV. And then when I got into high school, I was a phone talker. Nobody talks on the phone anymore. Like, kids don't even talk on the phone, but I'd be on the phone for hours, like, well past the time, like 4 a.m. sometimes, and then go to school and sleep through class like that. I was like, huge. So it was TV and phone every night. When that's a phone connected to a cord in the wall,
Right.
and so I feel like it's new, but it's more different than it is like, oh, for the first time we're being consumed by these devices. It's like, well, they're just different devices.
Absolutely.
Right. But for us as parents, if you are a parent, the first thing, number one, absolutely, without question, if your kid doesn't have a phone, set up very high standards from the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Set this up because they're going to be so excited to get the 1 hour of screen time when they first get that phone, and then you'll still be able to make phone calls and what have you. They'll be so excited. What we found that happened is when we limited our daughter, we started to see her again.
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Because laying in it, this is why obesity is an issue
Yeah.
with this particular issue. Because if you're just laying in your bed the whole day,
Right.
you start to atrophy, whatever.
Oh,
It
man.
doesn't do anything good for your attitude. You're not getting the physical exercise that you need.
Oftentimes you're not even getting sunlight because
Yes.
you're just under
Right.
covers
Oh,
in your
yeah.
room. Windows are all shut.
It's a black hole. Because you
Yeah.
can look at it and think you're on for 5 minutes, and then 45 minutes has passed, and
crazy.
you don't even realize.
Right. Okay, so as you talk to parents about this, how do you help them make standards for their kids?
Yeah, which I think part of it is looking at the different areas in which the standards can be set. So you want to look at social limitations, you want to look at time, and you also want to look at what they have access to. And I think that that's a bit of a different ballgame because unlike when we were younger or when you had to plug your phone into the wall, I remember sneaking my parents' phone, unplugging it, moving it over to my room, plugging it in, and hoping that someone didn't pick up the other line and hear it. You had to do so much work to get to
You sound so
that
old
point.
now,
I'm so
Hannah.
old.
What are you, 30?
Yeah. But even in that amount of time, I think you see such a big difference. And with that, you had to go to such an extensive length to get the information that you wanted versus right now you can get anything within a second.
Yeah.
And so there's no delay of gratification, and the access is really difficult. And so one of the things that we're seeing is that the amount of freedom that you have with the developmental limitations that you have is really dangerous because they have all access to all things, but their brain's ability to rationalize what's helpful and what's unhelpful has not yet developed to the rate at which their freedom is.
So what you'll hear from a kid, so if you say, hey, we're going to limit your time and you can only be on this and only be on that, it feels to them like you're stealing away their freedom or you're creeping on them or whatever. How do you answer that?
Yeah, which I think that part of it is what you had initially discussed of where you start with your kids is really important. And if you start with, hey, you get this, and this is what you do. And as you show us responsibility, then we build in more responsibility and more time and freedom versus the opposite, which is way more painful and is obviously where most people end up as they give their kids their phone and then they realize, oh, these are all the challenges and complications. And then we pull back, and naturally any pullback process is going to get quite a bit of kickback. And so if you're able to anticipate, these are some of the things that we really care about. We care about when we're with each other as a family, that the phones are all in the middle. We care about eye contact and ability to communicate, and then setting your boundaries as it pertains to what you actually value as a family then becomes more of a preventative thing. And we talk about this in all areas, but preventative work versus reactive work is very different. And so beginning to see, okay, we know time is an issue. We know exposure is an issue. How do we begin to set limits that feel very fair and responsible, but also, like you were saying, Jonathan, set them in a way that actually feels empowering to the kid. Like, hey, you get this. This is awesome. You get to communicate. You get this. And the more you show us you're capable of responding well to it, the more freedom you get.
But most parents, the cat's out of the bag. It's already out there. And so they're going to have to react. So help us understand how we do that. Okay. I just found, oh my gosh, my kid's on 9 hours a day. My kid's texting at 12:30 at night. How do I pull it back?
Yes. Which if that's the case, oftentimes your child has been doing this for a while. And so anticipating the reaction is probably the first step that I prep parents for. Anticipate that they're going to be very angry, that they're going to feel it's very unjust, that they've been doing this for a long time and you just haven't noticed. And so they are likely to put it on you. They're likely to be angry with you. But preparing for the kickback is probably the first step. But also doing your research. As parents, I think oftentimes even looking into what apps are, being informed, knowing what's normal is going to be very helpful in the conversation, because a lot of parents jump into it because they're angry and they feel like they've been tricked. And then they're just in a heated, angry conversation rather than feeling really informed about what is a good boundary. Hey, I've noticed that you've been up until midnight and this is why it's not helpful. Your sleep, all these different things in one sentence, ideally. And then beginning to say, we need to set some parameters and these are what the parameters look like. But having some clarity and managing your own emotions before diving into the limit set is a really helpful thing, because it is always heated. It is rare that I've ever seen a child respond really well and think, oh, you're being very reasonable. You're right. I'll set these limits for myself.
Yeah, we can promise you their answer will be, you're the only parent that does any of this. All of my friends.
I had some conversation with my kids where when we first started finding that screen time app and I started looking at it and just like how much time we're spending on it, I remember actually having a conversation with the kids and just like, how much time do you think is like an appropriate amount of time?
Yeah.
Like, hey, we're going to put this on here. How much do you think? And because most of the time they don't know they're spending 9 hours on there. And so, and I thought, like, I don't know, the number that came back still seemed really high to me. It was something probably like 4 or 5 hours. Like, that seems fair. But even starting there, like, all right, let's try that, because you could totally just set it up that way. And I don't think it even tells them how much you set it up for. So you could start there. Now they know there's a limit, and you can just be monitoring it. And if they're going over it, or if they're going to the limit every time, and you want to cut it back, they may not even know. Like, you start with 5, you go to 4, you go to 3, and then they just know, like, at some point this is going to tell me I'm done, and for the day. And so, like, they've responded well. But I also have used times when, especially with my second son, when he has violated a rule that we've set for him and a freedom that we've given, that gives me full permission, and we talk it out. Like, all right, well, I'm blocking some stuff for now, and we'll, indefinitely, and we'll figure out when we're gonna come back. And so, and I have found, like, as much as he doesn't like that, he as long as I can get him to realize he caused it, it's like, well, we had an agreement. You broke the agreement, so now I got to tighten it up for a while. And that's worked well. And I have found that him having less access to less things he's night and day. Like,
and I'll say we had similar conversation. It didn't go well.
Yes.
But the end result is now she's more engaged.
Yeah.
Now I see her more. Now, I mean, yes, I have to watch Liv and Maddie with her. And I would never choose to watch that particular show, but she's downstairs and we're together and we're engaged.
Yeah.
Now, I made a lot of mistakes with my phone, but one thing I told them is that is not yours.
Right.
It's mine.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you don't have we have full access to it. We will take it. We'll look at your apps. We'll look at your text messages. We'll see all of that.
Yeah.
And then we actually have it set up. If you are on the same Apple ID on your iPad, you can set it to where you get all of the text messages into your iPad, so you know what's going in and out. But that, until you can pay for it, it's my device.
Right.
And we're doing that not because we're trying to creep on you, but because we're trying to protect you and help you develop safe parameters. Did I do the right thing, Hannah?
Well, and I think that goes down to the idea of it's not a right. And oftentimes people feel like it's a right, it's my freedom.
Yeah.
And getting clear on what is your right is to have love and belonging, to have safety, to have food and shelter. And those are things that are yours. But the things that aren't yours are these. And these are privileges, and these are things that show us that you're responsible. And so communicating that is a very parental teaching tool. So spot on. But I think part of it is every parent has a different preference of how much they watch. I have some parents who have apps that they are constantly watching, and actually creates a lot of parental paranoia of just watching and making sure that their speed limit of their kid's okay, and making sure that all these things are happening, which is a different conversation. But I think being willing to say, hey, we care enough, and it's not
And they're clever too. Like kids know, that's the things, we're dealing with technology.
Yep.
And we got older people trying to control technology with younger people who are like inventing the stuff. Like my son, we were watching a YouTube video the other day, like a learning thing about marketing stuff, and and this guy like is like, you can use any web browser you want, but I prefer this one. And I had never heard of it.
What was it?
Oh, I don't even know.
Can't remember.
I still don't even know. I'd never heard of it. And my son says, "Oh yeah, that's the one we used to get around all the blocks at the school."
Like, interesting.
Right.
Oh,
He's like, the school.
Yeah, and he wishes he hadn't said that.
What's so funny is the school thinks they're locking down the kids. The school's just locking down the teachers, man.
Yes.
They're not locking down any kids. As soon as it goes out, they tell all their friends.
One of the articles you sent me has all this, here are the apps that you got to avoid.
Yeah.
And the minute I give the apps that you have to avoid,
they're expired.
Yeah, there'll be a new one.
Yeah.
So, but you do, like this one, I've never heard of Sham Chat. Have you heard that?
No, this sounds like a sketchy app.
Yeah, no. Its tagline is "Don't be yourself." It introduces itself as a place where you can be anything. It can be attractive for kids who aren't feeling particularly comfortable with who they are. So they invent this new personality.
Okay.
So again, they're not communicating as themselves.
Right.
All right.
Yep. Which I think that's funny that you brought that up, because oftentimes when clients will tell me what they're doing or how they're getting around the system, kids are really smart.
Oh, they're brilliant.
And oftentimes, even in therapy, I'll just think, wow, that took a lot of strategy. That was really
they're brilliant.
that was advanced.
They're
and
brilliant.
I think the way that I've had kids rewire their parents' internet to be able to get back stuff at night. I mean, just really, you can see the extent of commitment to it is high. But they are smart. And I think that the apps, it is a process of not just being willing to say, oh, well, I don't know about technology, but being willing to learn, okay, how are they doing this? How do I set a password? And being
so
really
I caught my son. This was kind of funny. So we got him a phone. I got it all locked down. So the reason why his phone is on current lockdown is I had it all locked down at a time limit. It's like off at like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. He doesn't have it. And then I catch him on a phone at night. And I'm like, how is he even doing that? And so I called him out. I'm like, bring me your phone. He's like, my phone's right there. And it was in the room that I was in. I'm like, so bring me the phone that you were on. He had an old phone. Like he was using, he pulled something out of a drawer, charged it up, and he was using his old phone. Like, oh, my time expired. I'll just pull out the other phone.
He was just on Wi-Fi. It doesn't need to connect.
I was like, dude, on one side you're a genius. On the other side, you're grounded for life. Like,
Let me give you one other app, all right? Because I don't want to keep going because they'll all be expired. This one is called Poof. It doesn't exist anymore, but it represents a whole category of apps that are being created, then deleted, just to pop up as something new. So they provide the ability to hide apps from being displayed on your phone screen. Mm-hmm. So your parent gets a hold of it.
Yeah.
Poof makes it disappear. It doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, let's spend the rest of the time that we have on setting boundaries. Okay, you said this one already. Technology is not a right. This isn't your phone. This is my phone. We're going to, one of the things that you have to do, too, is you break it, you pay for it.
right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because how often are we bailing them out? Because they broke it or what have you.
Right. Yeah, we've been we've done that where they buy their own. Asher, my middle son, has bought several phones because he's broken several phones.
Yes.
So, but he also is really good at making money, so he figures it out. Or also good at people giving him phones, so he's good at that too. But
I have a daughter that she has broken every man. Like you didn't even know how many different ways that she has broken phones. Here are some excuses. Honey, how'd you break your phone? Well, I threw it to a friend and she didn't catch it.
Okay.
yeah.
My favorite was, well, for one, this was just last summer. She's an older kid. She says, well, I put it on the road and a truck rolled over it. But my favorite was, I put it on the toilet paper roll because I had to use the bathroom. You go, why'd you put it on the toilet paper roll? Well, what was I supposed to do with it? Well, I don't know. Human beings all go through that. They're with phones. Their phones don't break every time. But why would you want to bail a kid out by fixing their phone, buying them a new phone? Because you're just continuing to give them access which they want to use and misuse, and
Right.
Yeah.
right?
Which phones have countless opportunities to build responsibility. And I
Right.
think that if you're looking at it in that capacity, that as a parent, you can teach so many things. Like if you break something, your responsibility is to raise money to buy it. And what does
Right.
that look like? If you want an app or if you want more freedom, then hey, communicate with me what you think the dangers are, what your plan is, how we can best support you, kind of like you were saying, and seeing what your child actually can come up with is really interesting. Oftentimes with teens too, the teens will come up with a way more extensive plan than a parent would even
Right.
think to come up with, just because they know more details about it. But if we just offer them, hey, here's your phone, or yep,
Right.
that sounds good, you can
Right.
have that, then you miss out on an opportunity to be able to do a lot of learning and seeing actually what your child's capable of coming up with.
And each phone, which is Android phones or iPhones, you can set them up to where your child cannot download an app without you knowing about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you need to make sure that you have your phone set up.
Well, and I have mine set up where I let them download apps. It asks for permission if it's like a paid app, I think, but they can download apps, but they cannot delete them. So once it's on your phone, it's on your phone, and so if I get a hold of your phone, I can go through your apps and I can see everything that you can download. So that to me gives them a little bit of freedom, but it's like if you make a bad choice, that's stuck on your phone until I delete it. So it kind of and I've told them that, like, so it's not like I'm trying to catch them. I'm just like, just so you know, whatever you put on here, I get to see it, and that's helpful.
How often do you check that?
Not very often,
Right.
but they know. I mean, they've had. I mean, Ash, or my oldest Josiah, he's had his taken away because there was, like, I told him that they weren't getting Snapchat, and then he got Snapchat, and this was years ago, and he couldn't get it off his phone, and so it's like, hey, you have Snapchat, huh? No, you don't have a phone.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. And I think you need to know their password.
Yeah.
If you don't know their password, you don't pay for their phone. All those things. You just
Right.
have to be able to have that access.
Yeah. And that transparency piece is really critical, I think, because if
Yeah.
your child knows you're looking at their phone, they know the parameters that you've set in place, they know you have their password,
Right.
then you're not in a really interesting trust situation, because oftentimes
Right.
with trust, it feels like a teen feels betrayed by their parent when they feel like they were violated with their privacy. But if they knew
Right.
all along that you had these parameters, it's still hard, but it eliminates a lot of, you are spying on me, you don't
Right,
care about
that's
my
it.
privacy.
Yep.
Right.
And if they know my parents are watching this stuff, then you're not stuck in a situation of, I saw this text message, how do I address this? Because they don't know that I know.
Right.
So you're doing a lot of backtracking rather than just saying, hey, we check it periodically, we have all access, this is
Yeah.
what we're going to do, so that there's no surprises.
You could even say, look, I just listened to a podcast about phones, and I realized that we made some mistakes. So we're going to set up some new parameters, and I don't think you're probably going to be very happy with them. But this is the way it's going to be from now on.
Yeah.
Just because we're trying to protect you. And you won't get that. I get it. You'll understand when you're a parent. I understand that. But to be able to have that rational, to be able to do the reset.
Yep.
Because some people need to do the reset. They didn't do everything.
Right.
Well, we didn't do all the things right at the beginning either.
No.
But we've kind of learned. And yes, you're right. It's going to be angry and, oh, my friends. But look, man, this is parenting.
Yeah.
My friends get to do it. I don't. Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, like, we were the worst parents ever because our kids couldn't go to that movie and
Right.
do these things or go on the party bus or whatever. Yeah, I'm a terrible parent. But now I still have relationships with my kids. It was bad at times.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and sticking with it too, of putting a policy in place, or a policy is so official, but putting a rule in place,
Right.
and then being willing to say, I'm actually going to stay consistent with this, instead of just it being a fad of, I got more information about technology and now I'm afraid, so I'm putting in all these restrictions, and then 2 weeks later, when I forgot about it,
Right.
you're off the hook. But really being willing to set your own parameters that feel,
Yeah.
reasonable.
that's the
to
great thing
stay
about
with.
the iPhone app, the Screen Time app.
Right.
You can just go on and set them,
Right.
and you don't have to check them.
Yeah.
It just shuts off.
Yeah, and it's great because now it becomes inconvenient to change it. So now it's like, actually, like, I'm just too lazy to give you more access. Sorry, buddy. Like,
Yeah.
And my daughter just went on a trip where she was gone all weekend, and they're on the bus for 8 hours.
Yeah.
And so she texted me and says, this is really annoying. So I said, okay, I'll give you another hour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right?
That's great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, here's some more. We've got a limited amount of time, but we're trying to set some decent parameters. So I'll just go over them. If you have anything to throw in there. Okay. There needs to be in your home a no zone for cell phones. Okay? Talk about that. Mealtime or whenever that is.
For us, it's more of just kind of we'll gather everybody in and just be like, hey, let's talk. Like, we don't do it as much as we should, but when we do it, everybody loves it. Like, when we just like, let's just have a family moment. Like, put your phone down and let's just have conversation. So it's not, I mean, our house is so sporadic, and we're just always, I mean, it's just probably the ages of kids and the way that we've chosen to do life, but we're always in the middle of somebody going somewhere and doing something. So there will be just times where it's like, okay, we need to get together and we just need to, and like, we'll literally go around and just speak highly of each other. Like, what do you see in your brother? What do you see in your sister? And in those moments, it's set devices down, turn off TVs, all that.
Sure. And one of the things that we'll say is no, you can't be on two screens.
Okay.
If you're sitting in front of a TV, then you put down your phone. But we're not going to have you on two screens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
But even being willing to set some at dinner table parameters, you know, we don't do phones at tables, and that's okay.
Right.
When we're out in restaurants, we don't do phones at tables. When we're in our house, we don't do phones at tables. But kind of like that, where your kids almost know the mantra of no phones at tables. It doesn't have to be a fight. It's just, oh, nope, no phones at tables.
Yeah, the one I'm trying to crack down on with everybody in our house, because it just seems to be, for me, it's the big heavy one that I don't like doing, is no phone in your bed. Like, just at least get out of bed, man. Just scrolling in bed. I just feel so gross and wasted if I'm just scrolling in bed. So,
if only there was some little electrical charge you could put in there.
There's probably a blanket app that you can get that just zaps you with an electric blanket.
Be great.
Here's another one. No at night. Okay? So they're not on it 24/7. So there's a shutdown time.
Yeah.
When you say, okay, after this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is the least popular boundary that I've encountered.
It is?
Having no phones.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. It gets so much kickback of even charging your phone outside of your room or having a charging station, which I think for parents, I always will suggest modeling this. This is good for you, too. Get an alarm clock for your room. I hear that excuse all the time. Well, I needed to wake up. I needed to do all these things. Well, there's the thing called a clock. Yeah. But I think even that accountability of when kids can't sleep, I constantly hear people say, I'm so tired. I didn't sleep at all last night. Or I slept an hour. Their parents went to bed. They were on their phone all night. And it's rare that anything good or productive happens in the middle of the night on a teen's phone anyway. But giving them the freedom to do that is just, I mean, it's putting cake in front of them and asking them not to eat it.
And know where all the old extra phones are. If you have that rule.
Yes, totally.
That's right.
But even knowing, like, iPads, their school iPads have apps on that. I mean, it's just knowing.
It's old. It used to be for, like, it's a dating principle. It's called the Cinderella principle. Nothing good happens after midnight.
There you go.
But that's one of our next point is setting a good example. And for me, I need to do that myself. To after a certain point, don't check email, because then I get that bad email that somebody has something critical to say that I can't even deal with until the next day, or you get some notification that your bank's over, whatever it is, and then you can't sleep. So being the example, setting your phone, not looking at it while you're watching TV, all of those things.
Right. Yeah, I violate a lot of that.
It's hard.
I'm pretty good. Like, my phone is, like, I do use it as an alarm clock, but it's like, but I do have like I won't look at it in bed. And so that's where I just set it up and set it off. But I could see probably for my kids that would be a good thing. But
Yeah. Well, and most parents actually struggle just as much with their kids alongside of them in this process. And so even with parents, kids will say, well, my mom's on her phone constantly, or whatever it is. And then recognizing as an adult, do I actually set the boundaries that I'm asking these teens to set, even as a therapist, and having to really check myself. And
I've considered, I haven't done this yet, but I've considered, and it'd be interesting to get your take on this, of actually setting up my phone with the lockdown that I feel like is good for me, and giving my kids my password and having them lock it down. Just as, like, I'm not doing this to own you. I'm doing this because it's good for us, and there's an opportunity there of just, like, I don't need to be watching 3 hours of videos either. So
Right. I think that's really wise. In fact, I think that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my screen time to what her screen time is. So say, hey, that's mine too. I didn't just do it for you. Mom did it. I did it.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe even talk to my daughter that she really looks up to and says, hey, we're doing this.
Yes.
And so why don't you set your phone to that too?
Right.
So that
Yeah.
we can all kind of live in this.
Yeah.
Because we
Yeah.
know it's going to be better for us.
Yeah, and that pulls in a really cool common humanity piece of I get this is frustrating. This actually makes me frustrated when I have these limitations, and so I have more compassion towards you when I'm setting limits on you,
Right.
because I get how inconvenient it can be,
Right.
and how limiting it can feel, and so that creates a gentle vibe across the board, which is
Right.
really helpful.
Yeah.
Is there anything we missed in this?
Probably.
Always.
Most likely.
Yeah.
There is. Give us some hope, Hannah. Can you give us some hope?
Yeah. I think the encouraging part about it is that just like any trending thing, we often see these in therapy where we'll have conferences on certain topics and they pass and we figure them out and we learn how to manage them. And so with certain drugs or with certain trends or all of these things, that they're all in the moment, similar to coronavirus, for example, that when it's in the heat of the moment, it feels like there's a high pressure on it. You need to figure it out. It's going to ruin our lives. It's going to ruin the children. It's going to ruin this generation. But I think to believe and just even notice the trends in behavior and trends in things that cause fear, and notice that they all rise and fall, but that the more research that comes out and the more aware you are, the more we kind of learn to master this new thing, and this becomes a part of life. And so I think if there's a kind of a flow in it of we're going to move through this is a part of the season, and this is something that we'll learn, and eventually in 10 years this will be a very normal part, and then there will be something new that we're navigating in our articles and in our podcasts. But that, even as a clinician, kind of settles me a bit to feel less panicked about. We need to make sure we figure this out and set these right parameters, and we don't want to ruin their minds. And but more just developing a mindset of, okay, this is the thing right now, and next month it'll be a new thing and a new app, just like you were saying, they disappear as fast as they come, but allowing that to create some steadiness in the adults right now of it's okay, and we'll figure it out, and all the things that are coming up are manageable. They just feel new, and new is scary. So
do you guys know the name Tim Kimmel? He's written several books on parenting. He wrote a book called Grace-Based Parenting, and I was talking to him, and it was right about the time my kids were going into junior high, and I said, I'm so afraid my kids are going into junior high. And he looked at me and says, why are you afraid? Mm-hmm. And I don't know how many God people are out there, but his point was, look, God's got you. And he's going to go with you in the battle, and you don't need to fear it. In fact, what Jonathan is saying is true, that when you fear it, you make it worse, and you drive them farther away.
yeah.
So don't fear it. Take some of these things, do what works for you. Try and it's okay to blow it and learn. And keep trying, because you're gonna have to stay frosty, man. You're gonna have to keep moving, because it's gonna change on you. But these kids, whether they're adopted kids, whether they're your bio kids or whatever, you see how I'm tying both podcasts in together right now. You see what I'm doing here. I think we'll be able to do it.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I just always come back to, like, with devices, the battle that I face and that I want my kids to wrestle with too is the difference between consuming and creating, because it is such an opportunity. And like we live in an awesome time with these scary devices. Like, those are the things that'll change the next generation in positive and negative ways. And so I also want to empower.
Yeah, that's good.
I like
that. Smart. Well, thank you guys. Thanks, Hannah.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah.
We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for joining us for these last 10 steps. You can find the show notes for this podcast on our website, 10stepsfurther.com. If you'd like to join us for another journey, or if you know someone else who's on this walk, subscribe to our podcast at 10 Steps Further on iTunes, or simply search 10 Steps Further on your podcast app. If you'd like to be part of the conversation with a question or a comment or a criticism or even a wisecrack, join our Facebook group by simply searching 10 Steps Further. And if you're ever in San Diego, come visit us at Canyon Springs Church. We'd love to meet you.